This week, Apple is expected to pull back the curtain on 3 new iPhones, a sequel to the iPhone X, a bigger, more premium version of the iPhone X, and a less expensive model with a big screen and multiple color options. That last iPhone is easily the most interesting of the 3, and barring some surprise Mac news, it just might be the most important device Apple shows off this week. We all remember the iPhone 5C and SE. They were relatively inexpensive options that took familiar smartphone guts and squeezed them into cost-effective bodies. That's basically what we're expecting from the so-called 10C. It's expected to use aluminum instead of stainless steel for its body. But here's the thing. While it uses a less expensive LCD screen, it's going to be bigger than the screen Apple uses for a standard iPhone X. That's new for them, but not exactly a surprise. I mean, come on, you don't need an army of analysts to tell you that people like big screens. The iPhone XC is said to feature a 6.1-inch display that'll sit right between the iPhone X successor and the rumored iPhone XS Max, and making that sort of screen real estate available to people who don't want to spend $1,000 on a phone is a savvy move. Right now, we're expecting the iPhone XC, or whatever it's called, to start in the $700 to $800 range. If true, you'll still pay a premium over top-flight Android phones like the OnePlus 6, but it could be a no-brainer for long-running Apple fans who weren't thrilled with the idea of dropping 10 Benjamins on a phone. If you're coming from an older device like an iPhone 6s, even something as relatively modest as the iPhone XC will seem like a valuable step forward. You're getting something modern for a decent price, and well after Apple has worked out some of the iPhone X's early kinks. The impending release of iOS 12 and the major changes it contains only helps. Upgraders will have access to a wholly modern iOS experience. We've seen this strategy before, too. The new cheap iPad Apple introduced in 2017 was meant on some level to give existing iOS users a sense of what iOS was truly capable of on even modest new hardware. Of course, this kind of phone seems even better suited to bring new people into the iPhone fold. Greater China has been a big market for Apple for years now, and that growth just keeps going. In Apple's most recent earnings release, the company pointed to a nearly 20% jump in revenue year over year. We're still not entirely sure how some new tariffs on products made in China will affect things, but a few things are still clear. Apple sells a lot of stuff there, and a less expensive version of the iPhone X with a big screen could help Apple capture an even bigger slice of China's growing middle class. Strong progress in China is something Apple will always chase, but it's going to be really interesting to see what the iPhone XC does for the company in places where Apple really wants to do well. And the best example of that is probably India, where you can get a properly powerful flagship Android phone for the equivalent of about $300 US. A shiny new iPhone that costs $700 on the low end is going to be a big jump in price no matter how you slice it, and I wouldn't count on the iPhone XC being a big growth driver there. Because of hefty import taxes and the fact that the average smartphone in India costs a little over $150 US, Apple will probably keep leaning on older, cheaper devices like the iPhone 6s. iPhones always prove to be pretty popular smartphone options, but the mix of iOS 12 and the more accessible modern hardware here means the iPhone XC might be a global hit in the way Apple's other cheap phones never really were. Then again, fierce competition from some great, cheap Android devices around the world just might stop the XC in its tracks. Either way, Apple and everyone who watches Apple are in for a fascinating ride.